Whose intro?
You.
I think it's definitely your turn, Nick.
How?
Because me and Sky have done the last couple of intros.
I don't think that's correct.
Just get on with it, Nick.
I don't
Come
think
on.
so. Well, this
Give
is
us-
the intro. Fucking well. Right. We have actually a good diverse amount of questions.
An abundance, a variety of questions.
This
Plethora.
week.
A plethora.
I will ask the first question. How would you help a client who seemingly can't get her head in the game? She wants to lose weight, but finds herself drinking more alcohol in the evenings than she'd like. We've revisited her goals. She's led her action steps to move forward with, but most weeks she feels like she isn't moving forward as much as she would like and gets frustrated with herself. Anthony.
I really thought you were going to Sky for that.
I know. You weren't ready for that, were you?
I wasn't. I didn't even listen to the question because I thought it was going to.
You're a dickhead.
I did. Okay. Listen, there needs to be, and it looks like you've tried this, whoever this is. It looks like you've tried this in regards to revisiting goals and all of that. But regardless, there needs to be a level of awareness created, self-awareness created. An honest conversation. I don't know this person, right? And hopefully the coach knows this person as to how to communicate best to them. Although I think what's important is that you ask certain questions that raise awareness on if they want to change. And do they understand what they need to focus on to be able to change? Like, what would success look like to them? I know you've put here, where is it in the question? We revisited her goals. She's led to actions. Okay, so there's some level of autonomy created. My next part of that would be then sitting down and going, well, how have you agreed to measure that on her terms? And then sitting down and going, right, okay, you set these. How do you think you're doing in relation to them? Not very well. Okay, cool. How are you thinking and feeling about that? Where's your head at with that? I think, let's be honest, you can't physically motivate your clients. You all know this. And it sounds like you've done a lot of the right things with this person. But for me, it's raising awareness on the fact that she's created her own goals and potentially hasn't, well, by the sound of it, hasn't moved forward with them. So then you need to raise awareness of that and then seek to understand if this client is at a point of being focused on a goal, ready to change and all of that. And if they're not, that's okay. Some people will still pay for coaching if they're even if they're not moving forward. That might be something that keeps her sane for whatever reason. She's going through a bit of a bad time outside. I don't know. I'm making narratives up in my head now, but there's lots of different ways that can go. But personally, I would raise awareness on the fact that she's created these targets or focuses and they've not been achieved. Ask her how she thinks she's doing with them, what needs to happen next, measure some level of readiness to change and move from there. There's not much more that you can do. Anyone else would add anything else?
I think it's kind of the same thing, but sometimes, even if that is their goal and they have led their own actions, sometimes they're not setting themselves up well enough, and there has to be something in between getting to the actions that get them to the goals and where they are now. So it's again raising awareness about that. But sometimes for me, I'll have a client that their overarching goal is weight loss, but they're in a place where they feel so shit and their behaviors are not lending themselves to them doing the basic of things, that the first step is just to start to feel a bit better. And like with the whole, I'm drinking more alcohol than she wants to, that says to me that she's not feeling very good at the moment. So setting herself goals that she'd like to achieve, but not putting herself in a position to do that is too far away. There's still too big of a gap. So it's just adding to your point of the awareness of there's still a gap to fill, and we shouldn't always just jump straight to, okay, this is your goal. What actions are going to take you there? It could be, okay, well, how far away are you from even doing those simple actions? Because there's clearly stuff going on that's impeding her. So
Agree.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because you keep fucking forgetting. I'm fucking married now. I'm a married woman.
You'll always be an ASCII.
That's true. Right, I'll ask the next one. How do you do marketing on the gym floor if it's a pretty quiet gym and most people already know who you are? You're fucking famous, Nick. What do you do?
I would use that as an advantage because marketing, we need to get people to know, like, trust you. So actually, that's a very, very good thing. One of the things that I would say is that you've got to get people you've got to get yourself out of the norm and default setting that you have in how you go about having the conversations with these people, because you've probably got a bunch of people that you'd walk by and say hello to, you'd smile at. You've probably got normal conversations that you have when you see people in the gym, and it's a little bit more than that. So you've got to, like, your people's responses are directly in line with how you then approach that and the questions you ask and the way you approach things. So I would be thinking about trying to understand a little bit more from the people that you already know and already know you. That can be done in many different ways, from having simple open questions that are not normal for that type of conversation with those people. I would be putting on certain different activities that may trigger different levels of conversation, whether that could be as simple as little workshops, little seminars. It might be like a little demonstration area where you might have a bunch of common foods where it might be guess how much sugar content is in there. It's quite a triggering one that opens up conversations. Just basically anything to get them out of the norm of what that current kind of interaction is like. The fact is that you can leverage the amount of rapport that you have with people and who already know you. That's basically you're skipping a big, big part of the puzzle, which you've already done, which is ACE. Now it's about getting them in different conversations so that you can understand them, A, B, then provide them with some help based on your understanding of what they're going through, what they want, which will build value and authority, which then leads to working with people. So take it as a massive, massive positive and leverage it. Anything you would add? You two losers.
Next question, more fell asleep then. Should you always include CTAs in all of your marketing emails and into the post? Or should you look to just provide more value in some emails without asking for anything? Sky Hill.
Personally, for me, it depends where you are and what you're driving. If you are building up towards something, then yes, more CTAs, absolutely, in posts, in emails. If you're not, and you're building more of like an awareness, or like value is probably an awareness piece that you're doing about what you do, or how you educate, or just a little bit about who you are, then maybe not as many CTAs. And they don't have to be like, oh, I'm asking you to do something. It could just be a little reminder of, here's where you can hear more from me, or here's a podcast episode I was on, or here's a freebie that you can download. It doesn't have to always be get in touch if you want a consult, click this link to book a call. It can be other sorts of CTAs. So I think it depends. If you're building up to something, more direct CTAs. If you just want to provide value, then something that is just another way to give to them, I would personally say.
Nick?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you've got to have something on everything. Like, you've got to invite them into, like Sky was saying there, like listening to a podcast which gives more context on something, asking a question to invite people, ask questions, little downloads, little mini kind of, if you want to call them lead magnets, whatever it is. I think getting people conditioned to knowing how to get in touch with you is massive. Because if people don't know that, that might be a simple fix after months and months and months of doing lots of emails and putting time into it. That might get people converting, having conversations and applying and applying to work with you. So yeah, I would say there's obvious things which might lead it from a story that you've wrote about. There might be something that doesn't lead to any type of kind of call to action, but you have almost like a bit of a signature CTAs at the bottom of your email. And then you've absolutely got to do direct emails and sales copy and SLOs and whatnot. You absolutely have to do that. I would say actually it's probably doing more of that than overthinking and doing less of it, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. Anthony Park. Great mood today, isn't it?
For change.
Okay, a bit of feedback on booking client sessions. Some clients want to know my availability in advance, but it's hard for me to provide it as my schedule can change depending on clients who work shifts. I considered using a booking system for them to use and book their own sessions, but that will make my schedule an absolute chaos. Is there a middle ground for this?
The middle ground is two different. So having the group of clients that have to change quite regular as a fairly open, these are my hours that you can book in. So let's say one tile on Calendly for that. And then the other one is fixed for the ones that are fixed every week. So at least you then know you're then dictating your whole schedule. But what you're doing is you've got these fixed people who've got no reason that they can move. And then you've got these shift patterns, but you're going to put your availability open from what you know of them, but also from when you want to work. And you give them 2 separate links. So you've got shift workers and then you've got the people who are pretty fixed. I think that answers the question, don't you, Nick?
It's an average answer, but whatever.
Thanks very much, everyone. Next one, please.
Right then.
Next one.
It's lunchtime.
I'll ask you. Should your grid posts be the same time each week or doesn't it matter?
I think you should go with, if you've got analytics, when are people most active on your chosen platform? So if they are most active between, for instance, 7 and 9 p.m, then your post should probably be going out between 7 and 9 p.m. on those days. If it's a weekend and you'll post on a Sunday and the busiest time is a morning, post it on a morning. So yes, similar-ish, I think, but it's not based on like, oh, I'm just going to post just because I said I'd post at 7 p.m. It's because this app is telling me that most of the people that follow me are online at this time, I think. And also, another thing that everyone always says, which actually makes sense, is are you going to be online at that time? You don't have to be. Sometimes I'm not. I've scheduled posts where I'm not typically going to be online. But if you can make it so that you are, if anyone comments or DMs or reacts, then you can start a conversation. That always helps as well. But I think that's too important.
Next question. I asked that one, so I don't know where we are now, if I'm honest.
I've got it. My question.
It's all a mess.
I have been talking to this one individual on Instagram, and they have expressed interest in working with me in the past. At what point should I nudge him towards a consultation? How to do it? What should I say?
Good question.
That is a good question.
I would look back on the conversation that you've had with this person and pick out certain pain points or challenges and outcomes that they want, and almost do a bit of a story sequence that talks directly to that person. I think if you're someone who has engaged with you quite a lot and is on your stories and watching it, and maybe they're voting on certain different things and engaging in certain different ways, I would literally write that timeline out for that person. That's one option. The other option is because you're asking the question, the time probably is now. If you've given some support and you've had those good conversations and you feel that, and you're thinking about this person when it comes to certain things that you're creating content on or whatnot, don't be scared to be quite direct. Hey, I've been thinking about this over the last couple of weeks, about the conversation we've had before. I'm taking on new clients when it comes to May. Thought of you first of all. How would you like to move forward with it? I think that's, if you've had conversations back and forth and they've expressed interest before, sometimes actually being direct in your own way, which is authentic and genuine, it can give people that little reminder and nudge. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever with the right context. So those are 2 different ways I would probably go about it. Yeah. Anything you guys would add to that? I didn't think so, to be honest with you, because it's a pretty good answer. Just get a picture of his face.
I know. The only time you smiled is when we sang Sweet Caroline.
Oh, here's one for you, Anthony. You like this one. What is the coach feedback model? And could you give an example of a piece of feedback using it, please?
Why would I like that one?
You know what I mean, Sky?
I want to know your reasoning.
Because you wang on about it in person days. You're the one that puts all the stuff together. You're the king of this shit.
There we go. Now I'm in. Fantastic, Sky. Brilliant. Right, I will explain.
Mansplaining. Here we go.
Right, you've only got 5 minutes. All right?
What?
You got 5 minutes.
I can't remember what it stands for. One sec. Let me. Clarify is the C, isn't it? So clarify what you're talking through with the person. So if I'm doing a check-in, you're testing me here. If I'm doing a check-in, I'm clarifying what we're going through. So it's a bit like paraphrasing when you're coaching. But obviously, if you're doing a check-in, you kind of paraphrase. You're not repeating everything they've said. You've gone off the back of reading this. I'm highlighting that we're going to focus on this, of what we're going to talk about, and these are my reasons why. They always observe, they're always the most important point, because what you'll find is, especially in check-ins, for example, people might get frustrated or emotional about not moving in the right direction or whatever. So the O is observe facts or behaviours. So you might go, you've stated this, although look at that, and that's how much you've progressed this week. And then you might get the programme up or whatever it is. So you're saying that you don't feel motivated or flat, that you're not progressing, although let's look at your numbers. So that's like observing. A is to remind you of asking the person for their perspective. So that might be, let me know your thoughts off the back of seeing the program now and seeing how you are progressing week on week. C is the coach. So then you might coach towards like the improvement. So you've highlighted this, this, and this, and they said you're struggling. If what I found is this, that you're moving forward at this rate. Although, if this is what you're frustrated with at this moment, here's my some suggestions. All right. So you're suggesting a little bit of what to try, refine, or build on a little bit. And then the last one is always highlight the positives and the next steps. So these are the positives, but or although these are the next steps to move us forward. Hopefully that gives a bit of an example. But if you want an actual practical example, I don't know who's asked a question, then I can go into it. In fact, we're doing this tomorrow, so I'll use it. I use that question to kick us off. Next question, please. It's my question, isn't it? What kind of content do you find is most engaging? Reels or informative/written posts?
I would put this back onto that person. What content do you find most engaging? Why do you stop and
What
read?
you started on them for? What you started on them for?
If people get if people get confused, is that clapping noises? Is it just you? Right, this is the same way where people think about like how to sell. Well, how do you like to be sold to? What's engaging to you? Because if you find it engaging, you'll probably find it engaging to create rather than just trying to create things that you think you have to do. But for me, what I would say is reels can sometimes be more engaging than written or informative post, unless the written or informative post starts with something that makes people go, what the fuck's this about? I need to read it. So if you just start it with something very bland, very generic, that doesn't invite people to want to read on, they're not going to fucking engage with it. The same goes for a reel. If it doesn't start with something, either a visual that makes people stop or a bit of text that makes people stop, it's not going to be engaging. So I think figure out what you think's quite good and the kind of post that you save or you watch and why. Figure out, like, pull it apart. What is it about that made me stop? Was it the visual side of it? Was it the first sentence of it? How could I use that in the content that I want to put out? But I also think the most engaging posts at the minute are kind of the storytelling sorts, which is where you add more of a personal, either this happened to me or it's a story about somebody else. And you can still be informative throughout that, but sometimes just going like, here's 5 high protein breakfast ideas is not necessarily the most engaging thing. You could lead it with something, the pain point or an outcome. That was a waffle. Anyone got anything different?
No, I prefer reels, but if we're talking about engagement, you will probably get more engagement from a savable, like, what the flipping
Who
hell
is that?
Why is your notification on? Like, Nick, your notifications are loud, mate.
Don't
And
pretend that anybody apart from us talks to you.
It's because they're notifications. Why would he be silent?
right, next question, come on, real.
Oh gosh, come on. Who's got a question? Got one. One of the biggest issues I face is where to start, where to focus my energy. What are the steps you would take to create clarity and prevent yourself from darting from task to task?
Very, very simply on what the objective is for me and my business. That's the first thing. And asking yourself hard questions of, this has actually really helped me over the last couple of months, is instead of just reacting and going, because I can get into that a little bit, I guess, because there's so much going on. But when I've got a time block and I've got that booked in, but I've also got something in my head that I want to do, I'll just ask myself the question, right, what is directly aligned with now? What is directly aligned with what we want and going to have the biggest impact? And that really helps me. It's very simple. I actively ask myself that when I'm in a little bit of conflict over lots of different things going on and starting lots of different things, wanting to do one thing and not really wanting to do the other thing because it's hard or it takes longer. I'll ask myself that question, what is directly impactful now and aligned with what we want to achieve? That's really, really helped over the last couple of weeks. Very simple. And I think that simplicity, it's definitely helped me sift through the different things. The first thing is, like, if you can't get, or if you don't know long-term goals or you struggle with that, what's in the next couple of weeks? What's directly aligned with that? what is going to impact things now in the next couple of weeks. Yes, we need long-term things that are going to compoundly affect things, but as well. But I think that's one of them. Again, that's helped me, and I think that's one of the more important things, especially if what it sounds like if you're struggling with setting your goals and knowing what's right and what's wrong for you. That helps. So yeah, ask yourself those questions. Anything else?
No.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Guy, do you have an opinion on that?
Very much the same. I think for me, if I'm darting from task to task, I need to sit down and look at like what is the priority of the week. Like, because I will always go to the things that I enjoy doing more. I will always go to making content or writing emails or doing programming when I really need to be doing something else that's less exciting. So it's like, what's the immediate thing that I need to do? Do that before you start another task. So yeah, just prioritizing my to-do list.
I've been offered some free digital billboard space. Should I use it to build awareness of the gym, or should I have an offer with a direct call to action? Anthony?
Offer with a direct call to action. I don't know who's asked the question, but I don't know what the context is behind what they're currently advertising, marketing, stuff like that. But for me, it makes much more sense. If you have the opportunity to advertise, you advertise for you, your offer, and a direct call to action for that.
Excellent. I would agree.
Do I have to ask a question now?
Yes, you
I
do.
don't know where we are.
No, because I think Nick missed one, if I'm dead honest. He did miss one, yeah. Nick the prick. Dealing with imposter syndrome.
It's a big one.
It is a big one, but there's kind of 3 or 4 steps to it, isn't there? And I know generally speaking, but go on, I'll let you go on first.
I think it depends on the context. In what scenario do you have imposter syndrome? Because it might be that you feel imposter syndrome about, I don't know, programming, but not actually in sessions. Or it might be you have imposter syndrome about putting yourself out there on social media, but not working with clients one-to-one. I think you have to accept that it's part of growing and being a business owner. So you're going to feel that at lots of different points. The cheesy thing that everyone says is it's usually when you are going for a bit of growth or you're pushing for something that you start to then doubt yourself. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it. And maybe it's just a little bit of self-awareness of either I don't quite feel prepared and there's more that you could do, or it's just really new and it just doesn't feel natural to you yet. And you're just stepping outside your comfort zone. So I think we have to kind of get used to being in bed with imposter syndrome. I don't
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'd be quite weird.
Snuggling imposter syndrome. No, I think it's going to show up. It's going to show up continuously in different scenarios. For me, sometimes it is when something is new and I don't feel fully prepared. So again, maybe it's just that I always find that doing things that help me feel more prepared is going to help that. So yeah, it's really hard to say without more context, but I would say the biggest thing is that you need to get used to it because you're going to feel that. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing something. It doesn't mean that you should hold yourself back. And it's usually a sign that you're probably pushing, and that's a good thing. Different points of view. Let's go.
Say that again.
Have you got any different points of view or different
No,
ways?
I think, listen, like, you're right. I think reframing it is that you're challenging yourself, and it's a good thing. I think people see it as a bad thing. But a lot of the time, if you feel like you've got imposter syndrome, it means that you're challenging yourself, and that can only be a good thing for the majority of people. I think normalise it, because that's what you just said. Completely normalise it because it's a normal process. I think another couple of things is like focus on like evidence. It's a bit like what I've just said before about that checking thing. Focus on evidence. I think back to when I had imposter syndrome, like doing talks in front of loads of people. There's parts of it where I'm probably second guessing myself a little bit. And that's because a lot of the time I'm making it about me and not them. So kind of shift the kind of spotlight from yourself to other people that you're serving, like who you're doing it for. It's not a lot of the time. I know it has a direct impact on you, but a lot of the time you're doing it for other people. So if you reframe that, it helps. And then last point is just the evidence piece. So like try not to go off emotions and go off evidence. Like, what's telling you that you're not good enough to do this? Who's told you that? What's giving you the evidence that you're not good enough? Because a lot of the time there's no evidence at all. You're just going off emotions and you can manage them, although it's hard. That is all. No question there. Nick, do you ever run out of lead magnet ideas?
No.
Why not?
How come you don't run out of lead magnet ideas? Do you?
How come I don't?
Yes.
Yeah, how come you don't?
Because there's a shitload of issues that people go through.
Do you run out of lead magnet ideas, Sky?
No. This
Is that a question? Sorry.
it
Yeah,
is
what's
a
the
question, but I think the point is like maybe this person's struggling with where they come from. Where do you get
I think it's a really good question, to be honest.
I just thought that was a random question you asked. Is there any more context to it?
Someone's question. That's why we're prompting you to say more.
Was there any more context to it?
No, there
just
isn't any
you
more
were
context.
running out of lead magnet ideas. They're currently trying to think, or they are currently gearing up to do a lead magnet.
No, I think people get confused. I think people get caught up with the format versus the problem. I think they get caught up with like delivering it first versus simply going, what's going to help people? Like before I even knew what lead magnets were, not aware of it whatsoever. I was doing it on the gym floor all the time. I was one that always sticks out to me, and it was the first client I got in, I think it was an LA Fitness I was working out of. There was a little side room with mats in there, and they had the ab cradles. Remember the ab cradles? Yeah. And I had spent like years on a cruise ship, and when I got on the cruise ship, I got qualified in like yoga and Pilates and stuff. So I was quite knowledgeable about the Pilates and the core and all that kind of stuff. And these ab cradles were like a godsend because you could just tear them apart. You knew exactly where people were going to be hurting in the wrong area. And that was, on the face of it, a lead magnet because I just used to position myself in there and do little workshops with people and technique correction. And it used to flood me with leads and flood me with inquiries and tasters and stuff. So I think it's just looking at, very simply, what's going to help people get over this first hurdle. That's the be all and end all with them. How are you going to deliver it? There's so many different options, and I think that's why it gets confusing. But keep it simple. Keep it simple, I would say.
Yeah, I think. Go on.
I was just going to say, like, thinking about like commercial gyms right now, like there's probably a big stigma, and you look at the classes and the get starteds and the workshops and the seminars and all that kind of stuff as something you have to do, but they're lead magnets. They're lead magnets. Like they're there. I don't agree with a lot of stuff commercial gyms do, but they're there because they've got data to back it up that people want them and they attend. So maximize it. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and another way that I look at this as well is like sometimes people get stuck because they think, right, I'm bringing new people in. What do I need to make? How's it going to bring people in? Whereas some of my best lead magnets have come from, right, there's a resource or there's something I want to do for my clients, and then I open it up and go, hey, by the way, I'm putting this on for my clients for this time only. I'm going to open it up to anybody else that wants to come, and you can see what it is that I do or what it is that we are about and what the community is like. So sometimes if you're struggling with like, what's this new thing that I can make? If you're doing something for your clients or you're thinking about that, that could be two birds, one stone as well.
Exactly.
Being self-employed and running your own business, do you find it hard to have a good work-life balance?
Yes. Next. Listen, it's when you're self-employed, there is more, or there should be more freedom. But then, like, you have more freedom, you have less structure. So there's always a give and take, and different people will work with different ways. Like, I like structure. I like a structure and a routine. That's my personality. That's what keeps me focused. If me having no structure and too much freedom around that, I'd be less productive. Some other people might be on the other end of the spectrum of that. They're loads of freedom and they deal with things in different ways. And also I think there's two different degrees of challenges. One, you have very little time that you've got to structure your work time in, and you've got too much freedom, which sometimes, a lot of the time, is just as challenging because you can just kick things down the road and you can take your time with things, which then bleeds into social life. So I always feel that having more structure to begin with helps to understand how productive you are with those times and gives yourself that productivity versus I've got a whole week to do this, or because it just gets kicked down the road. I'm generalizing here massively, but I think one of the top challenges for a hell of a lot of coaches and business owners is managing their time, managing their tasks, prioritizing productivity. It's a huge, huge thing, I think. So can it be very good? Yes, it can, but it comes off the back of probably being more structured at the beginning for a large amount of people. I'm not saying everybody, than not. Because unless you're kind of structured and you give yourself time limits and deadlines to get work done, you're never really going to know how productive you are, number one. And number two, when it comes to the question of should I outsource, you're not really going to know the answer because you don't know how much time that's taking and what the return on investment is if you do it, blah, blah, blah. So yes, you can. There's always a cost and reward, isn't there? There's always a balance to that. Any of your thoughts on that, Sky Hill? Don't like calling you Sky Hill, by the way.
Fine. You can both call me ASCII. Let's just put that to bed. Next week, I won't call me Sky Hill. So anyway, do you find it hard? Yes, I find it hard sometimes because I can blur the boundaries with myself in terms of I'll be in a productive mood and I will then sack off training or sack something else off because I'm like, I just want to get this stuff done whilst I'm in that flow. And then I get pissed off at myself later. And I can do the same I definitely want to take Friday off and I'm not willing to put any work in there. And then I get pissed off at myself when it comes to Sunday and I had something that I should have done on Friday. And that's always a work in progress. Obviously, I'm a lot better at it now because I do know how long it generally takes me to do stuff, emails, programming. And when it's your own business, you don't mind sometimes getting up a little bit earlier on a Saturday to do a bit of work before you have the day off. Or last night, I did a couple of hours work because I don't mind doing that if it sets me up well. But you do need that structure in the beginning, definitely. But sometimes you'll skew that balance more towards your personal life and more towards your work life. And then you'll get pissed off and pull it back.
What I meant to say was they were two world-class answers, and I can't improve on anything you just said. That's what you meant to say. Best way to deal with dips in motivation due to the gym you work at. I saw your post on it. Just think it may help others if they didn't.
Best way to deal with dicks, that was, wasn't it? That's probably the people in the gym that are just dick. Listen, it can be tough because a lot of the time your environment will dictate your mood and your motivation a lot of the time. But I think what you've got to think about first and foremost is sit down and go through the positives that gym brings you and how that aligns with your goals and all of that type of stuff. Because I think sometimes you can get yourself into a bit of a dark hole with it and you forget all of the positives that it can bring. So I'd remind yourself of all of that because I think it's important. And then I would try, if I was in your shoes, and I've had this several times, but you try and control what you can control, as cliche as that is that you don't need the whole gym to make you feel good, do you? You don't need, you only need a small group of probably your environment that you create. So think about not letting that control your mood and motivation and you taking control of it a little bit more. So that might be, right, when I go in, I'm hyper focused for these 2 hours on connecting with new members. And when I go in here, I'm just connecting with my clients. And that's going to have much more of a positive knock-on effect because you're controlling it. I'm doing this at this point. I'm going in to do this and it serves this objective, which serves this goal. And the positives out of this is that. And then I'm just going to go in and connect with these people, whether that be your clients, whether that be one or two PTs. And then everything else, it's kind of, you build your own little community within that. So that will help. There's been many a times where I've been like that and I've gone like, fuck this. I'm not bothering with this, and this. I'm not getting dragged into any of this chat. I'm focused on what I need to be focused on, which is going in, serving my clients, lead generating on the gym floor, speaking to new members, doing the stuff that makes me feel good, training in the gym, and then I'm going to fuck off. And that usually helps because a lot of the time in commercial gyms, the positives far outweigh the negatives. I can give them a bit of shit, don't get me wrong. I enjoy that, but there's a lot more positives. You've just got to try and take control of your environment a little bit and you get a grip of it. Anything you'd add? I'm aware that was outstanding too.
That was the last question.
Thank God for that.
I know. Go and have a walk and have a word with yourself, will you?
I always bring the vibe down.
You what?
You heard.
Listen, I'm controlling my environment. I've done what I've needed to do, and now I'm leaving. Do you know what I mean?